All right, let's go ahead and get going. First and foremost, I appreciate you making time and thank you for joining us on our Technology Truths webinar series. This is episode 3, Remote Work, Our New Reality. The other 2 sessions have been well received, so hopefully this holds up to the standard that we set. The goal of these sessions really is to provide some non-salesy, non-product or services-driven dialogue from some of our subject matter experts based on industry feedback and what we're seeing happen across our accounts. So a couple of housekeeping things and we'll dive right into the content. At any point in time, if there's a question, there's a Q&A option on your control panel within the RingCentral app. Simply click that, type in it, get your question out there. We'll get it responded to quickly and make the conversation as organic as possible. There will also be a Q&A session at the end where you can submit your questions. So if you do come across something that you want us to double click on, hold that question and we'll get it done then. There'll also be 2 interactive polls done throughout. I'll announce those within the conversation. And then again, on the toolbar that you have, you can click polls and respond to that, or a pop-up will manifest itself and you can actually respond in real time. So again, appreciate you making time to join us today. Let's go ahead and dive right in. First and foremost, my name is Jarrell Hall. I'm the Chief Technology Officer here at Alchemy Technology Group, focused on driving our technology strategy along with our pre-sales and practice principal organizations. Joining me on the call today in the webinar will be Jason Willis, who owns our experience practice. We'll bring some context to what that means here in a second. But should be a good conversation for those of you looking to take something back to your organization. For those not familiar with Alchemy, just a little bit of background. We're a national value-added reseller. We really want to underscore the word value there. The way we've built the organization with career sellers, career consultants, and former customers give us a holistic perspective when we go into customer environments. So it's not just going to be a product-driven conversation. It really is going to be a business outcome-driven conversation. Along with that, we have well over 500 customers now. So that exposure gives us an opportunity to port information and knowledge over from different industries and environments to help our customers down their journeys. And then at the bottom, when you look at the amount of expertise and experience that we've assembled, I put our team up against anyone out there. So a well-crafted message that the market has received very well, and we look to do great things moving forward. The way we position our Alchemy story is really around turning silos into solutions. When you look at the organizational landscape, most treat the symptom. They go after the identities, the devices, the apps, the content, networks and operations themselves and look for incremental transformation. We want to really look at it holistically, again, and truly drive towards what's the business outcome and the solution. So we're arranged in 3 primary practices. We have an experience practice, which is what we'll be going through today, our protect practice, and a transform practice. And with that being said, I'd like to bring Jason into the conversation. Jason, if you would, just give the attendees an overview of what the experience practice is and the areas of focus.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jarrell. So the experience practice really has 3 key pillars. So what we're focused on is the end user computing. So everything from the user's workstation or endpoint, whether that be a thin client, a fat client, iPhone, tablet, etc., all the way back to the data center. So we focus there on that. The next gen virtualization. So that's all of our virtualization technologies today. Everything from our traditional VDI stack to virtual applications to RDP to desktop as a service and anything that is out there exists in the cloud today. And then platform management is with all the different solutions that we offer and we make available, all those solutions need to have some type of delivery, some type of control, some type of way to push out policies or protections, updates, etc. So we specialize in getting those items and pieces out to those endpoints, devices, and users.
Awesome. I appreciate that background and that context, Jason. So, let's get right to the heart of the matter and why most of the attendees came today. So remote work, our new reality. You can't scroll 2 inches on LinkedIn without seeing some vendor or partner positioning how their solution will solve for COVID or work from home. This is a part of the current conversation. We just can't escape it. But with that comes a lot of distraction, a lot of rhetoric, a lot of misdirection, and a lot of repackaging of the message. of what has already existed. So when we talk about work from home, and remote work being a new reality, it's from the context of those permanent situations. How people responded to the pandemic and what those architectures and our work operations look like. So, Jason, we've had this conversation offline quite a bit. From an industry feedback perspective, what's some of the more glaring fact and fiction things that we're seeing out there regarding this new remote from work reality?
Well, with the acceleration of the remote work facility here, we've seen a number of items that really have surfaced as users have been on this journey for the remote working. And one of those things that we say is that a number of organizations, across the world, across the US, have already identified that a certain portion of our staff are going to work from home permanently. What they've done is they've really seen the value of those remote workers and how that enables potentially more productivity, better user interaction, et cetera, because now the folks are going to be working from home. So we've definitely seen how that is going to come into play and could be, potentially, I hate to use the word the new norm, but a lot of folks are seeing that as a new potential. That commute from the couch to the office has been ideal for a lot of users, and enables them a lot more time to spend, not just working with on their projects at work, but also getting more time with their families. So definitely, as that moves forward, bring your own device. I mean, what a lot of organizations today, prior to this pandemic coming out here, were BYOD. That's really not in the card for us. That is not something that we're looking at moving forward in this organization. And with the rapid scale out and deployment, a lot of organizations turn to say, hey, if you've got a device, here's how we can enable you to be productive at work. Here's how we can enable you to be successful. It's enabling our organization to not only be agile, but to perform business continuity to allow the business to continue to run. So that is something that has definitely taken center stage as we've evolved into this process and into this new era. The next is Cloud-based solutions took center stage. So for a lot of folks, people were, with the scramble and everything that was continuing, a number of folks instantly turned to look to the cloud. So any of those opportunities or ventures that they were looking at doing prior to that, that were potentially in play, were definitely escalated and ramped to be able to facilitate those users to work remotely. And a lot of that too also is in customers who were slightly opposed or not looking at the cloud as a solution, had little opportunities or alternatives to really be able to enable those users. So a lot of folks have taken on that breadth that is the cloud-based solutions and really embraced it, and have seen the benefits for their business, for their organization, to be able to continue to be productive. A number of things too that we've also talked in as we polled our various different customers and executives have also stated that for some folks and for some businesses, work from home has really increased. Users are feeling more productive, they're feeling more empowered, less time being spent for water cooling and drive-bys and some of the things that potentially inhibited folks from getting those tasks completed while being in the office. So for some select businesses, we've definitely seen the work from home definitely help out organizations. Next is technology overlap visualize. So what we're going with there is that when we were looking at the different technologies that have been out there, for most organizations, or some organizations, not all, there's a lot of silo that goes on, right? So this business unit, they've got networking, they've got security, and that all rolls up to one VP. They have their budget. You've got virtualization, servers, mobility that rolls up to another folks. A lot of those organizations, what we've seen is that they said, hey, we've got our technologies, we have all the things that we need to be able to be successful. And what organizations are finding is that there's a lot of overlap there. So hey, we've got 3 different products that do very similar things. Why are we spending budgets, on 3 different techs when we could standardize on one that can be able to benefit the business? So concurrency strategy exposed. So this is one of the gambles that a lot of organizations have taken, especially when it comes to remote work solutions. So if we've got 10,000 users that are out there today, you know what, maybe we buy 8,000 concurrent user licenses because look, we're never going to have everybody that shows up. And the best analogy I can leverage or exemplify this is the airline solution, where every airline always oversells all their seats if they can. They're going to sell every seat, no matter if they have room for it or not. And they're banking on the fact that everyone is not going to show up who owns that ticket. People are inherently going to miss, be late, etc. So that was definitely one of the exposures that we found, is that, hey, we thought we had enough to cover what we needed, but when everybody is now working from home and everybody is now showing up, a lot of organizations found that they didn't have enough licensing to be able to handle those additional workloads with the users working.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we saw a lot of that. You saw a lot of capacity exhaustion on VPN solutions and license increasing. So definitely can support that. So on the fiction side, what are we seeing there?
So one of the things that, traditionally a lot of folks had looked at working from home somewhat of a frown, like, oh, they're just working from home, air quotes, they're working when, they could be watching TV or running errands or doing something like that. But I think a lot of what we found is that organizations have seen that, hey, all of our staff doesn't need to be on site. We definitely have a subset or a set of users that, is very productive at home, that does help with getting them to be more efficient at work. So for most, have realized that this is something that definitely can carry on as we move forward. Another one too is only corporate devices can be secured. So a lot of folks thought that BYOD is just opening up these massive holes in their organization that potentially allows them to be vulnerable to insider threats, some type of attack, because they can't validate, control, and manage those devices. But the reality is that for most folks, they want to come in there, they can use, if they're a Mac user or they have some other different type of device that is their preference and allows them to be more productive for familiarity. That's what I use every day. So that is definitely something that has been identified. Cloud costs can't be justified. So, one of the things too is, a lot of folks are, again, we're looking at our organizations saying that, we can't handle that operational cost. We're preferential to a capital outlay. We want to spend the money and going. But now organizations are saying, hey, right now, we've got to keep as much cash as we can. So if we can operationalize those costs and be able to run those on a as needed basis, is definitely helping making the business a little bit more agile and being more cost conservative when it comes to some of those capital outlays are required for big purchases. Another one, staff who work from home not productive. I mean, we kind of touched on that one on the first one, but I think that is definitely one of these things that has been debunked by all means, because again, a lot of folks are seeing the increased productivity because, again, it is something that they're familiar and it's easier for them to work with. Next, staff knew the right technology and how to use that technology. One of the big things here is that I think the assumption is for most business units, organizations, is that, oh, hey, we've researched it, we've identified it, we've purchased it, everybody's got the technology. And then what we're seeing is, as we've gone through this process, is that, hey, we might have had the right technology, but was all the staff trained on it? For some use cases, you've got those folks who were always mobile, who had received training of how to remote in, whether it was VPN, whether that was using some type of virtualization app or desktop or RDP, et cetera. Or whether it was just being able to use some of the remote connectivity tools like a Teams or a Skype or a WebEx, or one of the other ones, Ring Central. I mean, you pick some of those other technologies out there, but people, what they didn't understand is that some people don't know how to use those, even though folks might find it intuitive and it's really easy, but without the proper training, it makes it challenging to use some of those technologies that have been purchased. Lastly, the platform monitoring was sufficient. When you get down to it, there's so many different things that can be monitored in an organization. And when you're monitoring those pieces, everyone thinks, oh, I'm monitoring the user experience. I'm able to see how the users are interacting. I'm able to monitor if my, machines are up or down. I'm able to monitor, pick one. But what we're coming to see and what we've realized throughout this is that not everything is being monitored. For some folks, they said, oh yeah, everybody come in over VPN. Well, hey, great, that's great. So those VPN devices were getting overloaded. Were we monitoring those devices to see? Maybe we were, maybe we won't. And that thing is, okay, well, everybody's coming in VPN. Now everybody's doing all their web streams and everything's coming across that connectivity. Are we monitoring how much bandwidth, how much throughput? Are we saturating our internet, our pop out? So I think a lot of what will come out of this is the fact that we've identified there's been a number of things that may or may not have been monitored, and we need to make sure that as we move forward, that we include those things and have a better holistic view of what our users are doing within the organization.
Yeah, good feedback there. And one of the things that we're looking to do to refine our messaging and help our customers on that second to last bullet point of fiction is making sure the right technologies are in the hands of the users, and more importantly, that they're educated on how to use it. So I'm going to drop a quick poll just to understand from the attendees here, what type of technologies your organizations use currently from a remote work perspective, just so that we can help, steer the conversation a certain way as we go back to getting the business up and running for our user communities and our customer base. So Jason, turning back to some of the rubber meeting the road and helping our customers get back to business, let's talk to some of the real world solutions that we're seeing gain a lot of traction right now.
Yeah, thank you, Joel. So some of those things here is really, we've seen a ton of activity about refining the remote access to see what we're delivering, how we can help our customers sustain secure remote access to the different solutions that they're operating with. Because really the goal is that whatever remote access solution that we deliver, we want to, again, make sure that we can, that it is scalable, there's something within the organization can deliver. And we also finally want to make sure it's secure because, inherently things are done on the fly, things get thrown together to be able to provide access. But throughout that journey, security has always got to be our top focus with today and how we've had a number of issues and people attacking different organizations. So one of the use cases that we had is we want to be able to provide those users with the remote access to their devices and machines. A number of people have had a significant investment in their endpoints that are sitting in those offices. And folks said, oh man, we don't have enough hardware to be able to hand everything out, or we don't feel comfortable sending potentially those devices home. So what our strategy is that we've integrated app and desktop delivery, front-ended by some type of MFA being provided by, one of the various identity providers out there to be able to provide those users secure remote access to those resources. And what we found is that when we're putting together solutions for like that, there's so much familiarity because if we're providing the access to those users' devices, they have a comfort already because they've been using those pieces and they've got all their stuff, which is right there. Next is cloud delivery. With all that rapid expansion, so many folks have turned to looking at the cloud, to be able to expand what they have on-prem, to be able to burst into a solution. When everything first went down, a number of folks, hardware was hard to get. Things weren't shipping out of China because, that's where the most of the manufacturing and the most of the products are created from. So all those delays and everything else compounded the issue. So everybody started turning to the cloud. And what we've seen with that is that when we're scaling those virtual machines, and enabling that on-prem connectivity, we found that a lot of users had a good experience by shifting those workloads to the cloud. Not identical to what they had on-prem, but it was enough to be able to provide those users good productivity as they began to segue into that hybrid solution with on-prem resources and being able to leverage cloud resources as well.
Yeah, Jason, quick question, just back on the remote access question came in. Do we find that many companies are still using VPN as their primary remote connectivity platform?
I would say that it was kind of a mixed bag that, if we found a lot of customers, who had the VDI solution, they were there. A lot of customers who had traditional published application were there. But VPN, where we saw a big uptick in that as well, just because the ease of entry for most users. VPN technology has been around for several decades now, and it was something that was very palatable for users to be able to bring home their laptop or desktop and be able to connect back into their solution and work as if they were in the office in essence.
Yeah, I think the other thing we saw, just to touch on that and double click a little bit further, was the fallback of familiarity. I think you underscored this on a previous slide. When organizations, everyone has a plan until first contact, right? So when we had that first moment of contact of, send users home, adjust on the fly, it became the easy button from an education perspective. I could give you a loaner laptop that already has a VPN client and just add VPN licenses. The issue became bandwidth constraints, appliance overload, the timeliness of getting those licenses. It was a much easier proposition for those that had those infrastructures in place than coming up with something like published apps or published desktops on the fly, having to re-educate an entire workforce on that. So I think there was a couple moving points there that probably reinvigorated the VPN conversation. We actually had customers that had moved away from it and turned it back on as a result of this massive request of sending users home. So interesting motions there. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah. So lastly, one of the other big ones we saw was application containerization. So, with the number of applications that, and for some organizations that have, it begins to sprawl very quickly, and the management and the overhead of being able to open up images and make changes to those things and push those out. When this thing hit and everybody's in a remote solution, it added a lot of challenge and complexity to the organization to be able to do some of those pieces. So what we're seeing with the containerization of applications is being able to deliver those applications, whether we are in a virtual world, whether we're in a physical world, or whether we're running those systems in the cloud. All those applications could be updated in a single spot and then delivered to all the users based on role, based on the different settings that they've configured for those applications, which takes a significant load off the IT team to be able to push those things out and test them and replicate that out, when everybody's in a scramble mode. So what we see is that when you're deploying a solution that provides that business agility, it really does allow the organization to target those individual applications that need those updates and criticality and be able to move forward without impacting the other solutions.
Couldn't agree more. So all of this has been pretty logical, pretty methodical up until this point, but let's face it, the attendees here and the world at large is definitely up against, budget constraints, staffing level changes, and just, the velocity and operating at the speed of business. So that being the case, what are some of the areas where, those that are facing those challenges should be focusing?
Well, a lot of that really, one of the big things I think is around training, right? So I think when you look at things right off the bat, I think it's definitely been identified that there are gaps in what the users and what the staff can and can't do. So I think that training is probably one of the biggest ones that we can do with this reduced staff or budget. Is definitely try to leverage all the vendor sponsored training to ensure that we have that adequate knowledge. There's a number of companies and organizations out there that are offering free trainings. I've gotten emails from all sorts of different places that are helping, that are wanting to get staff the education that they need, as everybody is trying to do more with less, with staff being diminished or reduced or being furloughed, et cetera. It really affords them the need to be able to have that training to be able to help continue to support the business. Next is automation. So what we're seeing here is a lot of businesses are trying to identify tasks or processes to be able to monitor, to be able to help remediate and definitely even deploy. So with automation today, there's so many different avenues that we can go with, and companies are really starting to take a hard look at that thing as how do we have point products that are going to be able to monitor the solutions that we need, be able to take subsequent actions that we've predefined for some of these issues. So that way there's not somebody who's sitting here at 2 o'clock in the morning waiting to receive an email, or we're waiting till the next day to get help with some of these things. If those issues are identified, the systems are able to take those actions. Redundancy. What we've also seen too as well is that when we're evaluating our current technologies, there's a number of products that definitely overlap. We've talked to users who said, oh, I have this product and I have that product and I have a different product. But at the end of the day, they're all doing similar functions, similar to what we had talked about earlier. and really trying to go out there and evaluate which one we should be standardizing on as a business or as an organization to help reduce those costs. It's definitely something that is everybody is looking for at this time, is doing more with less, right? Next is our vendors, right? So when we're out there and you're engaging your vendors, how can we explore cost avoidance opportunities? For anything that's open, whether that's projects or licensing or hardware. We have talked to some from various executives from multiple different customers, and a lot of them stated that they went back to those vendors and said, hey, we would love to have this product, or we would love to have this solution, or we'd love to have this service completed, but we can't do it for this. We've all been asked to cut 30% or 20% or whatever that number is. And I think that that's the key for customers, is to really go back out there and evaluate those vendors. And, if they're truly willing to partner with the organization, then they should be willing to help work with the business to adjust some of those numbers. So definitely don't be afraid to go out there and talk to the vendors to try and get those costs down. And last is sourcing. So we want to develop a short, midterm, and long-term sourcing strategies. And I think what we're going with here is that, hiring may not be an option really for the next year or so, due to the cost and due to everybody watching their budgets. So a lot of what we're seeing is making sense of leveraging consulting to be able to come in here, be very pointed, be very targeted, and either implement a solution, be able to troubleshoot, be able to help that business move forward, is definitely where a lot of folks are also going. And something else that we're also seeing a lot of too is managed services. Organizations are coming back being like, hey, we were trying to manage this thing, we were trying to publish something or do some type of activity, and we realized that, hey, we just don't have the skill sets. We love the technology, but internally we don't have that ability to be able to monitor it, to manage it, to develop it. So what a lot of customers are looking for is being able to have those managed services to be able to offload those resources to organizations that can monitor them.
Yeah, I think the other one there, just to underscore and educate the audience on, make sure you go dust off those old agreements that you signed 2 and 3 years ago with some of these large service providers. I don't want to call out names, but a lot of those large contracts will come with vouchers, planning services days, training credits, you name it. Make sure that those don't become shelfware and age out. If you're coming close to the end of that term, see if you can leverage all of them, because a lot of that spend, if you will, can be manipulated to achieve different things. So as an example, if you look at planning services, which is typically when a vendor wants you to look at their roadmap around their solution, and they'll throw half-day sessions in there with pre-sales resources or technical consultants. Ask them if, hey, can I use that same credit, that voucher, that planning services day to remediate something? Can you take a look at my architecture? Can you do a health check on our environment? Those are all different things that, again, we're talking about funding money on the back end from a vendor perspective. So these are things that they should be able to partner with you on and deliver to meet your business requirements. Very few push back and say, no, these are the hardened rules of the program. This is the only way that you can use it. A lot of those guidelines are spirit of type guidelines. So definitely take advantage of anything tied to those large support contracts. If you've made any type of licensing purchase over the last few years, there's likely some element of that in that agreement. So, as we get back to business, Jason, and look forward, let's walk through some of the priorities there.
Absolutely. So one of the big things, right, I think is we need to be able to evaluate and adjust those business continuity plans. I think what all organizations need to do is really have that honesty hour and be honest with themselves. What was good, what worked, what didn't work, and laying out those pieces and putting those together with a number of different leaders and business units, so that we have a collection of what those pieces were. And again, while this stuff is fresh, this is the time to put all this stuff down. If this is something that people push off and move forward, a lot of times is that some of that critical knowledge could be missed, or something that may not be picked up by other folks. So definitely want to make sure that you really are honest. And I think that that's the most important thing, is really just lay it all out and then develop what we need to do. Again, in all honesty here, I mean, there could be something we face again in the fall or next year. There could be something that pops up again, whether however this pandemic decides to or is moving forward. We need to make sure that we have the proper plan to be able to handle anything that comes up again. Also, address alternatively work from home solutions. We all know that when this rapid expansion of users working from home or being out of the office, there was a number of us that had to do temporary things to be able to make these solutions work, whether it was signing up for a trial or getting some temporary licensing or software, whatever that may be. Make sure that as you come back and as things start to come back to normal again, we definitely go out there and evaluate those solutions and make sure that any of those contracts that or things that we agreed to are terminated, so that the business doesn't and take additional costs and expenses. Adopt the start monitoring platforms. So we want to make sure that we're monitoring, your monitoring tools are focused on the solution and the problem. Too many of these monitoring solutions are trying to monitor the holistic solution or the entire environment, or they're finding that they can do it all. But we're seeing with customers and the feedback that we've had is that those solutions that were targeted and were pointed at the specific use cases that we needed to solve for were the most viable throughout the solution. So I would definitely recommend, for those out there, is make sure that when you are monitoring, you have things that monitor what you need to monitor. And it's not this big holistic approach, because it leaves some ambiguity when we're trying to troubleshoot. Next, determine baseline connectivity requirements. So as we've had a lot of folks who are working from home, people may or may not have been coming in externally when they were at the house. But now that everybody's at home, I think we need to take a hard look at what our connectivity requirements are, and help set guidelines for users. If where everyone's gonna work remotely, you need to have a minimum of a 10 meg internet connection coming out, and we need to make sure that we have the proper access to those pieces. If you're coming in, if you're out there in the boonies and you're coming over satellite and you're wondering, hey, this user's putting in a ticket every single day that they're slow or they're having issues. Well, if your throughput isn't where it needs to be, if your bandwidth isn't enough because your kids are having Zoom meetings and your husband or spouse is trying to do their job remotely as well, that pipe gets shrunken very quickly. So we encourage organizations to really take a hard look and try to build up those guidelines for users to say, hey, this is what we've identified are the minimum viable requirements to be able to work remotely. Next, revamp your BYOD and asset management standards. So, if prior to coming out of this thing, we did not have our BYO standards in place, this is the time to start putting those together. Whether it's, has a, certain CPU requirement, memory, hard drive stage, whatever those assets the business has defined to be most successful, let's go ahead and revamp those policies and really put some standards around what the users need to have as a minimum to be able to have bring your own device. And then the asset management standards. Let's be honest, a lot of folks came out there and said, hey, I've been working from home. I've only got one monitor from home. And now I'm going out there, and some folks were even braving the unknown and going back to the office to grab that second monitor, to grab those additional tools that they had in the office to be able to make them more productive. And that presents a big challenge for the business. Well, how do we now manage those things once they leave the office? It's all fair game, right? Because now the user has it. So I think a lot of businesses really need to take a hard look at how they manage their assets, what the requirements are, how do they enable the users to be able to get those devices home and then get them returned should anything happen, or if they inevitably come back to the office. Platform management for remote work solutions. So I think another big factor too is now, since those devices are coming back home, how do we be able to know that we can push out new policy changes? how we can validate that they got their updates, that we can understand that they're, still doing their work, pieces that they need to do. I think a lot of that is something that businesses are, having somewhat of a struggle with, to be able to get those different, to get those items pushed out for their users, to be able to ensure that they are meeting their security requirements or their business requirements for those assets. Next is honest products and solutions consolidation. Much as if we were talking to before, is that let's go through and really identify all those products and solutions that we have, and then really look to do a consolidation. Inherently, there's going to be a number of products that overlap, and again, I think it's very important for businesses as they move forward to really do that consolidation, as a measure not only to cost cut efforts, but also for standardization, for training, for education, for users and their staff. When have all these different products, all of them are going to have inherently different things, ways to access different pieces or parts. So by standardization and consolidation, really alleviates the amount of training that has to be done, and hopefully the amount of tickets that we're getting, for the service organization. Develop end user training awareness programs. So what we've identified is that a lot of these users aren't trained to be able to do what they're being asked to do, whether that's being able to connect remotely, whether that's interacting with maybe there's SaaS applications that were introduced as a part of this. We have new ways of entering in tickets or information, or being able to even leverage the help desk. Some users maybe have never called it outside the office. So really take a hard look at what and how we're training our users and what we're educating them with. Take some good feedback from them as things start to return and people are coming back. Is pull your organization, get that information from them. What were the gaps? What are the things that they needed help with? And then put together some training and awareness programs to be able to help them be successful. And as you onboard new users as well, it's only going to have a better success at the company. And lastly, evaluate workflow placement. So for the cloud framework. So, a lot of folks we're just shoving everything up to the cloud and moving things up there. And what we really need to do is understand what needs to be up there, what doesn't need to be up there. Not everything is a fit for the cloud. And what customers are seeing as well is when we've seen this big influx and users putting information up there, also came with, expensive monthly bills that were coming through to the organization. So not all pieces and not all parts are going to fit up in the cloud. So really take some time to identify what those pieces that need to remain on-prem, whether it's high CPU usage, whether that's big data storage. Some of those components really can get costly. And there's various different ways of being able to orchestrate access to those services and data, when you're in the cloud.
Yeah, and I think another thing, just to pair two of these together, is when we talk about standards and remote work, webcams, speakers, headsets, all of that, I think, play a part of that. If the organization isn't going to provide those assets and making sure that you at least provide guidance. I think the other one that's a little bit undersold is the education on how to work from home. Alchemy, we're a distributed organization, so we naturally are in home office settings. So it's a different mindset of how to isolate, get work done, be productive, but also what the workspace looks like, what your work area looks like, how to manage your time, how to have that work-life balance still be functional. I think there's a whole element there where IT has an opportunity to enable the business with, potentially quick start guides and just education at large around what the transformation is truly going to be for these permanent work from home work styles. So on that note, when we talk about getting back to business, I wanted to drop a quick poll out there around, what is your current preference or your organization's preference when we talk about getting back to business? Is it truly going to be BYOD, business as usual, cloud, on-prem, or hey, the goal is to keep staff remotely? So just want to get that guidance so that we can, again, bring that information back to our customer base and kind of report what we're seeing in other industries. So with that, I'll dive right into the Q&A section and appreciate all the dialogue, Jason. So first question that I had that came through, let me scroll back down to it, sorry. So now that we are seeing a number of work from home strategies and remote work being permanent, we're seeing VPN, VDI, and apps all in the atmosphere, if you will. What is the most predominant one you're seeing used, and is there any indication of why?
Yeah, great question, Drill. What we're seeing is this. I mean, I think we've seen an equal spread. Those customers who had a VDI implementation today, we continue to see those users leveraging that and having that experience. Virtual apps, I mean, there was an uptick of that because we have a lot more folks who are coming in and accessing their virtual applications and running those. Some of those apps that weren't inherently on those machines that they didn't need access to before, whether those were some type of web application, et cetera, that can be delivered virtually. Definitely saw an uptick in there, but I think one of the biggest ones was really around the VPN. I think that for a lot of organizations and businesses, what we talked about before is that, it was easy to take, potentially older devices or other devices, have that VPN client on there and install that and allow those users to work remotely efficiently. Because it's a very similar experience to what they had when they were working in the office. But where we did see some issues with that is really around the file transfers and depending on, how am I routing my internet traffic and some of those pieces. But there was a significant uptick for a lot of folks really in the VPN world, just really around familiarity because it's a click of a button and I'm back to working as normal.
Yeah, and I know we had a lot of security conversations around that because most are configured without MFA. They allow full network access, so there are a number of security challenges with it. But we did see a tremendous population of our customer base lean on that technology and published apps and desktops. Second question that came around: are we seeing a lot of requests around technology that proves productivity?
Yeah, so that's another great question. Is that a lot of organizations that were or vendors that had products out there that were doing similar things, whether that was intrusion protection or other security related options, have been retooled now to still deliver some of those options. But now what we're seeing is there's an influx of people or companies that are providing products that allow management, leadership to be able to see and understand what their staff and what their folks are doing, and sometimes a day to day and hour by hour, even integrating with applications to say, hey, this user was interfacing with Teams for 1.2 hours, and they were in Microsoft Outlook for 4 to 6 hours, and they were doing these other tasks related with these other applications. So definitely there has been a rise and uptick of those solutions that are coming out to be able to validate or kind of alleviate some of the misconceptions around management potentially saying, hey, my users may not be, our workers may not be productive, but definitely seeing a rise in that arena.
Yeah, still feel like it's a management issue, but yeah, we are seeing some insider threat tools be refactored for productivity validation. Another question just came in: are you seeing any capacity issues due to the increase in session connection times?
Well, I mean, there definitely has been some capacity issues around that, and with the amount of folks that are coming in, and depending on how those teams were handling the influx of users, if they were squeezing every drop, of CPU and memory out of their virtualized host, to be able to deliver desktops or applications, or even the protective devices, the firewalls that were preventing the VPN, we've definitely have seen some uptick in that. But I think most users understand that due to the situation, what's been occurring, it's somewhat considered normal. But I think a lot of organizations are looking back to enhancing that user experience and getting back to normal. But definitely saw an uptick for a lot of customers who were definitely trying to get everything they could of what they had.
Okay, let me check over here in the queue, see if there's any other questions. Okay, I don't see any. So thanks, Jason. So, with that, I want to give you an opportunity to give one final thought, kind of closing remark of remote work and kind of where we see it at now and into the future.
I'll definitely say this, remote work is definitely something that is going to be here to stay. Folks are really appreciating the ability to work remotely, to be able to be home with their families, to be able to spend that extra, few less hours that they're commuting to and from the work every single day. So definitely this is the new reality for a lot of organizations. And for those who have seen the enhanced productivity, those who have seen the enhanced interaction with their staff and teams, it is really made light of that this is a viable solution moving forward. So definitely it'll continue as we trans into the next times here.
Excellent. So thank you guys for joining today. I wanted to call your attention on the remote workforce. We've got 3 knowledge sharing opportunities out there on the Alchemy website around best practices, common issues, and then some assistance programs if you're still facing any type of challenge with enabling that workflow or that work style. So definitely take advantage of those free resources that are out there. But again, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us for this series. If there's any other information you need, please follow up with your Alchemy account executive. We look forward to serving you in the future. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.